Okay, thank you for all paying attention to the Waldo support messages that I sent. I apologize for all the problems that I've been having with GoToMeeting. I've more of their help pages in the last couple of weeks than I have probably in all the many years that I've been using this. So my feeling is that something has changed at GoToMeeting and they're just not very good at letting people know. So I'll continue to fight that battle myself, and hopefully the next time we meet this will be a lot smoother. Okay. First of all, the news from Liveline. This is pretty sketchy this week for me because I had a dental emergency on Tuesday, which is when John and I meet with Liveline, and by the time I got back and was on the call again, they were saying goodbye. So I don't really have anything really new to say right now, but or new from Liveline right now. But I can go ahead and go over the 5.20 update that I was unable to show you last week. So there is a new version of the software in the Waldo sandbox, and right now it is at 5.19.13. There was just a new version that was added in over this past weekend, so I've been trying to familiarize myself with things. There were some things that I had noticed last week about some pieces that are here, and let me just go back and reiterate what I saw. One of the first things that I saw is that in the circulation menu, there is an offline circulation link, and there are two pieces here for import and export. I have not found any information in the user manual yet. The release notes were updated, and in the, oops, sorry, wrong one. And in the release notes, the information about offline circ was basically that nothing has been, it's still not completed. So I don't know at this point how this is going to work, what it's going to look like. I do know, though, that there is the link here and that we will have a couple of options. And as I get more information, I'll let you know about it. Okay. The other changes, I focused primarily on circulation and patrons because I wanted to, you know, since the Code Fusion piece is primarily about circulation, I wanted to look at the pieces that I knew were integrated with that quite closely. So I started in the patrons account, and there are a couple of just basic things that are different about this page that you'll probably ignore once we get to this version. But one thing I've noticed is that there's a left-hand column on almost all of the pages now, even if there weren't any before. And in this case, we have a link for searching and browsing the patrons, but we still do our searching and browsing in the masthead as near as I can figure out. And there is also a new link here for Add New Patron. And when you click the Add New Patron, you get the regular form that you would see. Let me go ahead and just pull up my patron record. And I'll try and point out the things that I've noticed that were different about this. First of all, the left-hand column, even though we've had one on patrons for a long time, it looks different. And you'll notice one of the things I noticed, and this is really minor, but they're all right justified. So you don't your eye doesn't have to, your eye doesn't follow down on the left-hand side like it would. So now it takes a little bit of practice, but this is okay. The order of this has also changed. Oops. And you'll see that after the checkout page, which is still the first one, we still have our details page, and the information that displays on this page is the same as it always has been. Okay. Next, it has patron modification log. Now, if you recall, this modification log was way at the bottom in the version that you're running in production right now. Message preferences is something that's new. And in the message preferences, although from the add new patron page, you can still go through all of this, there is a separate view of this so that you can look and see what preferences have been set up for this patron. There are a lot of them, and also we used to have a tab or a line here that said messaging, and what it appears to me that this messaging preferences is doing is basically the same thing as what messaging used to do. It's the message queue, and it has the same information. The new piece that has been here, or that is in here now, is the subject. So you can now click on this and find out what the message was that was sent out on that particular, in that particular message. Since I've been doing lots of testing all the way back, my history doesn't go all the way back to when we started using the software. You'll notice that it stops here at 2016, but I can go out and I can go and look at what was happening on all of those days. So that is something that is new, something that I think you'll need to experiment with a little bit and determine if this is going to provide additional information that will help you when handling issues or problems with your patrons.
Hi, Becky.
Yes, go ahead.
So Co is keeping a record of the messages that are sent out to patrons, right?
That's correct.
Does that include messages about like, you have just checked out 2 books, here are the titles, or you have just returned 2 books, here are the titles?
That should be included here because those were always in the messaging before.
Right.
I haven't checked out or checked in a lot of things lately, as you can tell here, because most of them are either notifications from the system, basically the event signals when I run reports, and the outstanding fines. And that's only when I go in and click on the send fine notice and I'm on my patron record.
Okay.
It is supposed to include all of those. That's a good question, Stephen. I don't know why it does that. I will suggest that that should probably be changed because when I see the word preferences, I think about something that I can set. And while there are preferences that patrons can set in their account, this is not it. This is the message queue. I'll start doing some check-ins and check-outs and everything to see if those show up here. And if they don't, I'll report it as a problem. The borrowing relationships should remain pretty much the same as what you have them set up right now. I've got some that are set up here that I have dates on some of them, which actually they've all passed. So I'll have to do some updating on those. This one is new. This patron permissions, usually we handle permissions through the more drop-down and we set our permissions. I haven't read anything about why this is here now. It could be useful if you have some patrons that you want to give permissions for, especially under the view catalog. You may want to allow them to create lists and virtual shelves of bibliographic records, and you may want them to, I don't know what the perform extended functions. It says export search to a remote API, but I don't know what that means yet. I'll have to do a little research on that. And if you want to allow individual patrons to view title ratings rather than putting it in a role permission, that you would apply to a whole group of people. It can be something good, but again, I'll need to spend a little time finding out why this is put in here. The next one, now one thing that you don't see in our left-hand side here is fines. They've changed that significantly, and it's now under patron accounting. And this one is interesting because as I've been working with it more, I'm finding different ways. The page itself initially confused me because I'm used to seeing the summary information first, and what I see here now is just the current fees and payments. Now, I don't know how far back current goes because you can see here it goes all the way down to 2012. But it doesn't include absolutely everything. It includes the information that's still current. I can sort by the location, by the amount, by what is owed. I can also change my views so that I can look at either the current fees or the fee history. If I look at the fee history, this should be rather long, and as you can see, it is. So getting around the accounting information is a little bit different. You can hide the fees. I'm not sure why I would want to do that, but I can if I want to. And you can also see that we have the option to show payments or to hide payments. My guess is that if you're looking at the fees and payments, you want to have that, you want to see what has been credited and debited against this account. So I'll have to play with this a little bit more and do a little bit more research to see what the information is about this. Now, there's also, instead of using the words that we had before, we have add credit. And the add credit gives you the options of pay, credit, forgive, and write-off. Those are the same that we had before. And I noticed that in the drop-down in front of everything where there is something owed, we also have those options. So I think what this is telling me is that I can set it for all of for everything at one time, so I can make one payment and it'll pay everything, so I don't have to go to individual lines to make payments. And if I do choose to go to individual lines, I can click and then set what I want my my credit to be. You'll notice that our buttons now say pay instead of just clicking on something in front here. This is interesting. I noticed this and I don't understand what it's about. It is a barcode that links back to the number. So I'm not sure. I think that and it appears that it is in fact a clickable link. So if I click on that, it doesn't do anything. But still, it does appear to be clickable. But there are now fee IDs that I've noticed are being attached to any dollar amounts that are assessed against the patron record. So I think that means that there is some underlying changes with the fines and the accounting information in the tables. And I'll find out more information about that all. know that Jane has been working on the documentation for this, but I suspect that she isn't completely caught up with all of this. When she told me that the software had been updated and it was ready for testing in the sandbox, she also told me to concentrate on fines and fees because there are still things that they're trying to work out, and I've already sent a couple of issues to her, and unfortunately one she can't reproduce, and one I was directed incorrectly by the release notes. So we'll see what all of that is. Okay, then the next one is the patron preferences. The patron preferences is the same patron preferences that you would see if you go to your account. So if I click on here and go to account home, I'll see my patron preferences here as well. That means that as a patron, when I'm logged on, I can change my preferences from my account home. If I'm working on something with the staff and say that I want something changed, the staff can now go in and change it from within the patron record itself. So I think that's a nice change. It's not necessarily, it's not new, it's just an additional view of an item, a way to change things. Okay, the next one is our lost items, and lost items are still one of the options that we have here. With the lost items, the display has changed a little bit. You'll note that every column is sortable, so we can either sort by, by the home library or by call number. So if you want to identify lost items by call number, so you can go and check the shelf to see if an item has somehow appeared on the shelf without going through the check-in process, that's a very easy thing to do now. You'll notice too, and because I'm still learning all of this, that we have the status of lost. We also now have a value of claims returned that can be initiated from this lost page. So if I were to come to my local library and say, I checked this out in 2012, I know I brought this back, I don't know why it's still on my account, I could click on claims returned and then set a yes. Okay, that's going to change the processing in the background for how the lost and claims return works. I've pointed this out before that there was one piece in the user guide, in the release notes that talks about not just the patron fines, but I'm not sure I can find it here quickly. Anyway, there is something there that describes how the whole lost authorized value is going to change in the future. And essentially what it is doing is making the process of going from lost to claimed returns to found to refunds and everything. And I think we need to work with this. One of the issues I know that I've brought up before is that everyone's lost authorized value settings are not identical. And what I need to find out is how this change in the statuses is going to affect what people already have in their lost categories. I know I've collected data about that from various libraries to show what the differences are. Now that I've seen this a little bit, I'll be able to better explain why this might cause a few problems for us, and we'll have to find out from LibLime how we're going to make that transition before we move to this version of the software. Okay, the next piece in the patrons record is the history. This used to, I can't even remember what this used to be called. I've seen it so much, but instead of the word history, I think maybe reading record might be a little bit better term to have down here, since that's what they're calling the initial page. This is the page that shows you all of the activity on the patron's record, the check-ins, the checkouts. And we also now have a reserves history. Reserves as in meaning holds. So this will give you a list of all of the holds that this patron has placed, gives you a view of the information that is associated with this particular hold, and it will give you a complete list all the way down. The next one is the patron edit history, and I don't know what this one means yet. But I know that there are some libraries that have issues with anonymization, and in the note that I sent out last week, I have noticed that there is a couple of differences in the tools menu, in particular related to anonymization and deletion of patrons. So let me show you where we used to see anonymized delete patrons. I now have not found the word anonymize anywhere in this page, but I have seen delete patrons. So I know that for deleting patrons, it's going to be, I think, a little bit simpler. So you can identify the date. After you've identified the date, and basically this defaults to a year past from today's date. When you click on the next, it's going to ask if you want to delete them or move them to trash. I don't know what move them to trash means. I don't know if that puts them into an inactive status, which I would suspect it would. But then the finish. So before, we had an option for our anonymized delete patrons to do a test run. And I don't see the test run in here anymore. So that's another issue that I'll need to be working with LibLime to find out how this is all going to work now. Luckily, all of you have the current production version in your sandboxes and in your production areas, so I'll be able to go back and do screen prints and show what things looked like before, or look like for you now, but for me before. So I'll be able to identify where I see there might be some issues here. Okay, let me go back to my patron again. And this patron, like I said, this patron edit history, I'm going to have to find out more information. Other than that, the different buttons that appear here, as far as I can tell, they do the same things. If you upload patron images, you'll see their images here. I did this a long time ago, so I have my cat with me. Let me ask, are there any questions that you have about this that I haven't addressed so far that you would like me to ask about? And if that isn't something, if you don't have immediate questions, know that you can ask those via the Waldo support mailing list, and I will get those added into the version 5.20 problem reporting system so that we can get those answered. Okay, broadly speaking, the timeline for that for version 5.20 is the anticipated date will be the end of April, beginning of May to middle May, when this version 5.20 will be placed into your sandboxes. After that, after you have a chance to familiarize yourself with all the different changes, with trying to locate any problems before you move to the software, you'll be given time to do that. The actual implementation and installation of the software in your production version will be up to you. So when you're ready to move to 520, anytime after the software has been in your sandbox for, I would say, at least a couple of weeks, you can determine that you will request an upgrade to your production system. And to do that, you enter a support center ticket, and working with the support center staff, they will get a date and a time scheduled so that you'll know when the upgrade will be done. I don't anticipate that we will be saying that you all must be updated by a certain date, at least not at this point in time. If we get to the point where all but maybe 1 or 2 libraries have upgraded, we might encourage those libraries to think about upgrading sooner rather than later. But as it stands right now, there is going to be no deadline. You're welcome. Okay, let me go back to I'll return to the circle. Let me see. Okay, so that's basically circulation, patrons, and fines changes, as much as I know about those at this point. There is a new version of the release notes that is out. So the same URL that you've been using in previous weeks and months can be used to find this. The link is right here. I think I have it on the open on the wiki, but I'll make sure that if I don't have it there, that I'll put it there. As you can see, the manuals are being updated as different features are being changed. I did notice in this version that there is a lot more of the little pink IDs or pink blocks. And I think what that means is that there needs to be documentation upgrades for this. The newest version release number to look for in these updated release notes is 5.19.13, and there are several of them. The way this is arranged, again, is that the release notes begin with the new features. The new features are followed by any enhancements to existing features, followed finally by any fixes that have been made to the software based on problem reports that have been sent in from various customers. Okay, so now that I've made you all dizzy by scrolling very quickly through these, know that you can get to these anytime. Again, the URL is right here. It's a PDF. You can print it out and study it at your leisure, or you can look at it online. Okay, the information about the enhancements list I want to update you about. We all went through the enhancements list a month or a month and a half ago and identified pieces or different enhancements suggestions that could be dropped from the list. There were a few, but there were still about 14 or 15 that were sent back to, or that were sent to LibLine asking for a level of effort. That's what LOE stands for. And the information just came back this week from Patrick, so I haven't updated this chart yet. But I can tell you a little bit of information about how much time it would take. There are, let me expand this first. Okay, on these, the level of effort ranged all the way from small to medium. There were no large projects that were included in our list of ideas. And just so that you have an idea, and I will update this with the numbers that I have back from Patrick. For the first one, the level of effort that was estimated is 6 hours, so that's definitely a small item. The set specific content, which is down a little bit here. Okay. Okay, this is probably not going to be, the list that I have with the hours in is different than, it's in a different order than the one that I'm displaying to you right now. But let me just tell you that the longest time period that was identified for any one of the enhancements that we'd listed was 32 hours. And that was for the 404 error, and that's this error here. LibLime actually gave us two different estimates for this. One estimate was for the first part where we would just get a generic page that would say your link isn't found, and there would be some message that we would get there. That is the one that would be, that they estimated at 10 hours for the small approach. And then for the medium approach, which was making it customizable, would be 32 hours. So that one is the one that is the most expensive that we have. The rest of them all range from 6 hours to up to about 22 hours. So I think there's a good chance that we will be able to get several of the enhancements. And I will get the updated list out onto the wiki today yet, so that you have that information. All told, the estimate that we received back is anywhere between 107 and 129 hours of programming, which is pretty reasonable. And what John is working on is trying to identify the dollar amount that we have available. So what we talked with Patrick about was the fact that we would probably order, that we would probably ask for quotes for all of the small items initially, reserving to include others as we wanted. So that's where we are with our enhancements. Hopefully by the next time we meet, which is in 2 weeks, we'll be able to have a better idea of which items are being quoted and which items are not. The enhancements for the 404 error is one that we'll have to discuss as well, to see if we want to go for the small project or the larger project. Okay, the next thing that I have on the agenda is recordings. And as you know, I've been recording all of the sessions, and since the people who own the wiki have changed, and they've dropped down the amount of space from 20 gigabytes to 2 gigabytes, I've had trouble uploading pretty much anything new onto the wiki. So I've had to look at either deleting things or just trying to manually update some of the pages. During a meeting yesterday about a different subject that I had, one of the suggestions that was made was to put training or meeting recordings or whatever on YouTube, instead of trying to maintain it on the wiki. And I thought that sounded like a pretty good idea. So let me see here. I did upload a sample that hopefully would be at least a way for us to look at it and see if it's something that we would want. Okay, when I uploaded this onto the wiki, I did in fact.
Good afternoon, everyone.
upload. I'm going to turn off the speaker. I did upload one from 2017. The benefit of this is that it's pretty easy to get to it. I have only gone to this link by having the link itself available to me. And I, in setting this up, probably didn't set it up quite the best way to do it. I did add a hashtag, the title of the meeting, but when I tried searching by that hashtag, I got all of the Where's Waldo pages instead of this. So I'll have to do a little bit more identifying as to whether or not that's something that is with the way that the meeting is named, which right here is in a time and date and time format first, and then the name of the meeting. I did enter it into an education category, and it's something that maybe collectively you could suggest a more appropriate category for this to go in. So this is just, yeah, I didn't really want to make it publicly discoverable. So I think that this is something that I would like to pursue, if that's something that you would all like to have, at least so you can have access to the recordings that have been made, especially for those meetings that you weren't able to attend. If that's something that is desired, I will work on that over the next couple of weeks and upload at least a 2018 meeting so that you have something to look at and you have something that you can comment about and help me try and improve it so that it looks better for you all. I saw one comment saying, yes, definitely. Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of benefits on this. It'll help you share information with your staff, since they'll be able to go and look at the video. If there are comments or questions that are added in, everyone will see what they are. I did, in fact, disable comments for this one. So and I'll put this URL on the LAK agenda page so that you all can look at it in the meantime. It is right now set up as a public video, so you should not have problems getting to it. You might have problems searching for it, and I'm still trying to figure out how to make it searchable much easier for everyone. Okay, one other comment. I am doing this through my Google account, through my work Google account. So it's not costing me anything. And I think that's probably the best thing for us to look at. I was considering that, Ben, but I figured I should first make sure I could upload something. And now that that's the case, I'll do that. That way you can subscribe to the channel, and anything that is new, you would have a email notification that there is something new that's out there. Okay, let me go back over here. The testing scripts, now that I'm seeing some newer things, I have some better ideas on how to identify things that need to be reviewed, and to come up with maybe a couple of test situations that you can use for testing. And if you don't have a lot of time for testing, at least you'll have a list of the new things that you should be looking for once you go to production. Okay, that's all that I have today. I'm going to get the GoToMeeting scheduling thing resolved. You may all be getting invitations to new meetings that do have the URLs listed in them, but I'll keep you up to date on what's happening through the Waldo support mailing list. Are there any topics that any of you would like to bring up? Any comments, questions that I didn't cover? Okay, you're welcome. And I think that that's all that I've got for today. We'll meet again in 2 weeks, and hopefully I'll have a little bit better grasp of what the software has that's new and other pieces. Oh, one last thing. There is, okay, this account that I'm showing you right now is the one that I'm using to report problems encountered on LAK 5.20 or 5.19.13. And I thought it might be useful if I were to at least copy a list of at least the topics that are here so that you can see what kinds of problems have been encountered by the other libraries that are involved in the Code Fusion project. At least that way you would have an idea of what was happening. I also am thinking about sharing the login for this particular connection so that you could look at it more in depth, but I need to think about that a little bit. If it is something that people would want on a need-to-know basis, I would definitely be willing to share my credentials to get into this part of it. But I thought I would start with at least listing the problems that have been identified so far. Right now, there are only 19 issues that are here. So I definitely am interested in making sure that you have the information that you need about the testing. Okay, so hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll have lots of new things to look at. So that's all that I have for today. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks.